it's like words are failing me on this one. Violence Voyager. I don't know if folks have heard about this thing or not. It had a very limited run in US theaters back in July, and it's actually being released onto digital platforms on the 21st of this month, which does actually mean, full disclosure, I got to see this before it got released digitally. So I got slightly advanced eyes on this. Like, that never happens. So, that's cool. I was not paid to review this, to be clear. I was simply given access to it to review, and also given an embargo date, which is a first for me as well. God, it's almost like I'm professional. Isn't that a terrifying thought? Okay, speaking of terrifying, Violence Voyager. This is an animated film originating from Japan in a very unusual animated style, and it is it is a creepy, horror, gross, let's kill children kind of thing. And I'm not even going to spoiler that. You should kind of know this going in. Kids are not only going to be endangered, kids are going to die. And I haven't gotten a ton into Japanese horror, but I will say what little bit of Japanese horror I have indulged in, Japan seems way more casual about child murder than US horror tends to be. And, I've said before that I tend to be squeamish about that. I wasn't excessively with this, though, and that's going to tie back to the animation style, and I'll get to that. Let's start with the plot, because the plot is actually relatively straightforward. You have two young boys, an American boy named Bobby and his best friend, Akun, and they just go on a little trip, and they go up a mountain, and they come across something called Violence Voyager, which appears to be a slightly run-down, bit of a janky sort of amusement park. And they're like, oh, what the heck? They go in, and things get real bad. real bad. This, the plot, and honestly, the story overall, not super original. Even in terms of the horrific stuff that happens. And if you're wondering, we are dealing with straight up bloody gore violence. We are dealing with body horror. We are dealing with mad science. We are dealing with I don't even know what that is kind of stuff. Just all over the place. And it is not excessively unusual if you were to plot it out on paper, at least as far as horror things that incorporate one or more of these elements go. Which brings us to the animation, the visual presentation of this thing. Because I'm not going to say I've never seen something like this, because I've been to enough animation festivals and seen enough experimental animated shorts that I think I have seen something like this before. But I am dang impressed to see that somebody did this for a feature-length film and pulled it off and made it work. The best way to describe the animation style, and I'm going to say animation style more than art style, because it's not just artistic aesthetic we're talking about, the actual way in which the thing is animated. I would call it paper puppetry. I don't confuse that with paper stop motion or paper craft kind of stuff like that original pilot for South Park was. That's not quite what we're dealing with here. So the way it is any given shot, the pose that characters are in is static, but they may move around. But it's not done with computer, and it's not done like stop motion. It's done in camera. So to use an example, and to use a little paper puppet my daughter made for me a few years ago, if a scene had this wolf in it, it would appear here, and it would move across the screen in that fashion. Better than that, because it's not quite as janky as me doing it, but that's the way these things move. But also, I really want to impress upon you that it's unique art. It's a unique piece, basically every single shot. So, like, every new pose, it's not like they're reusing the same, paper puppet sort of thing for every shot. They're completely unique, fully colored, cut out every single time, but that is the way that they move. And like individual parts as well, like maybe just a hand moves, but again, you can tell the hand is just kind of in and out. It's really weird, but you get used to it quicker than you'd think. But, and this is kind of vital, it never becomes normal. So, like, to pull an example, with, say, something like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which has an incredibly unique animation style as well, in terms of the way that it was melding 2D and 3D animation elements. And that one, by the time it was done, I had kind of forgotten how unique the animation style was. Not because, like, it lost its luster, but just because I'd become so acclimated to it, it became my normal for the course of that movie. This never feels normal, and that's not a complaint. That's not a criticism. That is an asset to this thing, because the story, like I said, is weird and is twisted, but to keep the animation keeps you wrong-footed and like in a mental, like, this is not right. It's like, it's not quite Uncanny Valley, because Uncanny Valley, is derived from the premise of it looks almost real but not quite, or it looks almost human but not quite. Like, this doesn't look real at all, but it's like, it's some kind of version where it's like Uncanny Animated Valley. And I don't mean like trying to be photoreal animation, but like, it's almost like animation, but not quite. And it just throws you off the whole way through in a way that actually complements the story and complements what's going on. Other elements, like the music's pretty good. It's not overly elaborate, but it's wonderfully moody. The voice acting is not great. Amateurish is a little harsh, but it's not naturalistic. It's not particularly convincing. It's very obvious that the kids are being voiced by people who aren't actually kids. But again, I think partly because the animation never feels real, and never feels like natural in any way, it didn't bother me that the voice work was the way that it was. I think under almost any other circumstance, I would be complaining about the voice work, but here, no. Like, from right when it started, I'm like, whole thing gonna be like this? Okay, and it really, swallowing that really did put me in a headspace of, okay, show me what you got. How weird is this gonna get? And it gets pretty weird. And, like, honestly, content warnings up and down this thing. So, like I said, endangered children, dead children, body horror, nudity that is also very off-putting. Like, a lot of what's done here, you flat out could not do in live action. Like, no one would let you do this in live action. Which I think is, again, a little bit of Japanese horror that I've taken in so far. I think that is a thing that tends to happen with Japanese animated horror films. They really go for doing something that no one would ever let them do in live action. That's kind of going on here. It's a really unique, really creepy, really unsettling, shockingly engaging. Like, I didn't detach from this at any point. I'm like, and I don't want to get into spoilers or talk too much more about specifics. What I will say, though, is if I had one complaint, it's that I wish the climax was weirder. So, basically, with about 20 minutes to go, basically going into Act 3 of the story, I was hoping for one more final, you didn't see this coming bit of insanity. But it was done. It had shown me all the weirdness it was going to show me, setting up Act 3. And then Act 3 was relatively straightforward-ish. Like, it's still using all of the weirdness that had been introduced in the film up to that point. So that's all there. But there was no new weirdness introduced in the third act. And I kind of wish there was. It made the third act feel not disappointing, and it wasn't anticlimactic. It's just kind of that it almost felt too normal. It felt like this thing kept catching me off guard with doing something else really weird, and then just kind of stopped doing weird stuff for its final act. Again, not like completely stopped, like all the weird stuff introduced was all still there, but it was done throwing me new curveballs. And I had really gotten into the rhythm of the curveballs. And, I mean, I suppose you could argue that stopping throwing curveballs is its own kind of curveball, but that feels like a bit of a cop-out. Again, it's not like it falls apart. It's really solid all the way through. But it's run out of new things to make you go, ugh, by the time it's done. Like, with about 20 minutes left to go, you've seen everything that's going to skeeve you about this. And there's plenty to make you skeeve about this. And again, the animation style is so weird and shouldn't work. Not for feature length. Like I said, I'm pretty sure I've seen someone do this in a short before. And it's the kind of weird animation style I would never expect to be made to work for the length of a feature story. But there it is. So, yeah, Violence Voyager. If you are looking for something weird and unusual, both in terms of some of the elements of the story it's going to tell, and definitely in terms of the visual presentation, I would recommend checking it out. Now, as I said, it is going to be available on digital platforms on the 21st of October, this month. It's going to be on Amazon, DirecTV, Vimeo, FlixFling, Vudu, Fandango, and AT&T. It's being released by Dark Coast. And props to them for bringing this thing over, because, yeah, it's a weird one. It's an oddity, and it's the kind that if you enjoy unusual animation, if you enjoy twisted horror, especially if you enjoy both. I'm a little bit more into weird animation than I am into twisted horror, but I'm game for twisted horror every now and then, and I was legitimately impressed with the animation style. It sounds like Cheap Jack, the way I had to describe it, but you kind of need to see it. You need to see it in action and to realize, oh, okay. So props to this movie. And I would recommend checking it out if you think it's going to be up your alley. Like I said, hard R, so know what you're getting. But might just be the right bit of weirdness for some of you, I suspect. That's my thoughts on this thing. I can't ask you if you've seen it or what you think about it because it's not out yet. But do you have any animated things, especially in a horror vein, with a really unusual visual presentation that you want to recommend? Whatever you've got, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. You can support me on Patreon and help me keep the lights on and keep this thing going. Plus, there's a bunch of other links down there below. There's the subscribe and the like and social media links, all this stuff. Click on it or don't. I'm not going to tell you what to do because at the end of the day, you're the council. I'm just running the meetings, and until next time, this council's adjourned.